It's easier, someone once said, to imagine the end of the world than it is the end of capitalism.
But it's clear that where we can make systems of this complexity, cultural systems, economic systems, machines of this complexity, surely we could make a world that could first meet those needs I described that everyone should have, and then perhaps meet needs that people have only dreamed of, like the need for some autonomy and freedom. The need for that little space up there, the I part, to expand a little bit. Just a little. Just a little. Just a little.
The socialism that could engage with the yearnings and dreamings
in Miles Davis music.
An aesthetic dimension.
Radically incompatible with everyday life under capitalism.
Hey there, I'm Mike Watson, and this is another Acid Left Tactics tutorial in which I'll be discussing meme making again using Photoshop, but more focusing on approaches, as in creative approaches, than techniques. So basically, what we're going to try and do is get this bidden image looking much like the familiar Doomer meme image, which is often accompanied by texts, or we have the Doomer guy often meeting a Doomer girl or other figures and interacting and basically being effectively clinically depressed, or maybe even intellectually depressed, in the sense that he doesn't really agree with how things are, how the world is, and his resistance is to basically reject it all as a nihilist. And this kind of came about as we were talking to Joshua Citarella, the kind of well-known Twitch streamer and artist who talks a lot about memes on his stream, on our Acid Left podcast. So it's me and Adam Ray Adkins talking to him, and I came up with the idea that maybe the way to make Bidden not appealing, because I don't think he is appealing, but a way to make it kind of not okay but almost palatable to vote for him would be to cast him as a doomer, as a nihilist himself, because he is actually very negative in his speech making, having kind of come from a very difficult background, having lived through some very difficult experiences, such as his wife dying in a car crash with, I think, other family members in the 1970s. And he lost a son, I believe it was a son more recently than that, to I don't want to get this wrong, but I think it was to cancer. So he's had a tragic life, and he's also had a longish life of, shall we say, service in a kind of quotes, inverted commas, as a politician. So he's kind of seen how jaded and messed up the political system is, albeit partly jaded because he's part of it, because he himself is not completely ethically right. So I'm not a Biden fan, but the point is that no one wants to vote for Biden. I can't vote in the US election anyway, but I can kind of appreciate this, having voted in the UK a few times and having similar situations. No one wants to vote for Biden, but it's either vote for Biden or risking Trump getting back in, and we don't really want that on the left. So it's this kind of thing of like, it's a doomer fucking choice. It's a shitty choice. You would rather have had, if you're at all actually on the real left, you'd rather have had Bernie Sanders, even conceivably Elizabeth Warren running, but you have this Biden guy instead, who himself doesn't seem entirely convinced by his own campaign. Thing that he seems kind of gloomy, almost in a way that he's not convinced by himself. So what I'm doing here actually is just to get him looking like this doomer is basically drawing around him using simply the paintbrush tool in Photoshop, which you see in the tool icons on the left. It's about halfway down. There's a kind of paintbrush looking thing. And what I've also done there is I've got the eraser, which is about 3 down from that as an icon. I've just taken out some of the actual photo of Biden, and we've gone back to just the background, the kind of basic Photoshop, no color background, clear background. And that's what I'll do with all of the Bidden face later on. I'll take away basically all of the photographic features we now see there, which I've just used to get the shape of his face, and I'll colour those in the appropriate kind of Duma colours. So, I mean, this paintbrush, you know, it's quite easy to kind of, as you can see, I keep doing, to kind of go off the kind of line you're trying to kind of stay on, in which case you can just get the eraser again and just rub it out, much like if you're using a pencil. So that's kind of quite simple. So don't worry if you get something wrong. I've got lines there that I'll erase later, where you've got lines coming slightly off the face there, extra lines. You can basically go over all of that. So just basically get a rough outline. Don't be too precious, especially as the Duma meme is very kind of rough in its execution. So I think the key with this, as with drawing and painting in real life, as with anything I think creative, is not to be too precious in the first instance, to basically just kind of like get your line down there, otherwise you're facing a blank page. So get your line down there, don't be afraid to make a mistake and then go back over it, or even just leave little mistakes in, because this is quite a crude meme format. So basically what I've done there is I've got the magic tool, selected the area inside the hair, then I've got a paintbrush, I've chosen a grey colour, and I've painted grey inside the area chosen by the magic selection tool. So the magic selection tool will basically select a given area that that is within an outline or a certain tone or colour. I can do it there again in the eyebrow. So I've got that. You see, it's selecting like one or other tone, which is not perfectly what I want. But I selected that, painted that in grey, and then selected the remaining area and painted that in grey as well. And you can close up on your image just by pressing Control and plus, or Command and plus on your Apple Mac. Basically now I'm just putting the eyes and those kind of like furrows on the forehead in, and these other details. So remember, just simple lines. You can describe a mouth in one or two lines basically. And I'm just going to use the magic wand selection tool again to select different areas and just erase them there. So I'm just erasing the background. If you erase too much, just press Control or Command and Z to reverse what you've done. And you can also use the eraser. So then I'm going to just select the eraser on the left hand side and just rub out these last remaining kind of areas of unwanted colour. Just simplifying the face there and making it look as much as possible like the very crude Wojak kind of meme cartoons that the Duma derives from. And now I'm just taking out the rest of the colour, the shirt there, then the suit, and what I'll do there is then colour that in kind of planes of simple bold colour. So basically the same way we're going to select different areas and colour them in. You can basically choose new colours by going to the bottom left where you see these two coloured squares, clicking on them, and that will enable you to open up a range of colours you can choose from. So I've chosen the blue as it's kind of the kind of thing a politician would do, an American candidate for the presidency. They would wear blue to kind of identify themselves with blue collar workers, as in working class industrial workers, even though obviously they're far from that. So it's basically I'm going over little bits that have been missed by the magic wand selection tool and colouring them in. So you can do that by using the selection tool again, or you can do it by simply using a paintbrush and kind of manually by hand colouring in areas like I'm doing right there. So it's really a case of trial and error, going back over and back over, rubbing out lines, selecting areas again and filling them in. Now, so back to this Duma guy. I want to take his hat and put it on Joe Biden, because Joe obviously doesn't wear a hat like that, but the Duma guy does. So to make him like Duma Joe, to make the association that he is a Duma, we want to take that hat. So basically we're going to just pick the magnetic pen tool here, and you can just very kind of carefully go round, and the magnetic pen tool will cleave very closely to any obvious line, so that helps you to select the area. You close it, so I've gone very carefully around there but less carefully around the perimeter because it doesn't matter about that white bit there. You close it, you go to selection up there, you press selection, and you basically press copy, that's Control and C on a Windows machine, and then you go into your other tab where you have Joe Biden, press Control and V, that's Command and V in Mac, and you can just put your hat there. Use the magic wand tool to select the white area, basically just press delete once you selected it, and that will take it away. So I'm just repositioning that there with the selection tool, which is like the cross-shaped tool at the top left of the toolbar there on the left. So I'm repositioning it, then I press Control and T or Command and T in the Mac, and then you press right-click, and you want to select Warp, and then you can slowly bring things in, bring the edges of the hat in, and warp it to fit Biden's head, as I was doing there, as you can see. So now that the hat fits very closely to Biden's head. So there's kind of a few debates around this, and there's people who actually don't even think it's probably wise to ironically suggest one should vote for Joe Biden. But the thing is, we don't really have many choices, and I think most people on the left in America who are saying, I might not even vote for Joe Biden, as it actually is, out of some kind of principle. Okay, well that's fine, but many of those people who say that are actually in blue states. That is to say, they're in democratic states. They're in states that will go democratic, that will vote for Biden in any case. So of course one can say that. I've had that same experience in the UK when we didn't want to vote for Tony Blair, who had taken Britain into the Iraq war, into Afghanistan, who was very much a neoliberal, so maybe you wouldn't vote or you would lodge a protest vote. So I can see that very clearly, but I don't think that's really, saying we don't want Biden in, as opposed to Trump. It's saying, you're pretty secure in your own position that you voting for someone else or not voting isn't actually going to be something that stops Trump, being booted out. So, it's kind of complex. A lot of the aggression around, you shouldn't be promoting Biden, you shouldn't vote Biden, is, it's kind of a luxury in a way. Because if you can say that, then maybe you're not feeling that you're going to be that much at risk if Trump wins. But also, you may be saying that because you're just not in a position where your vote is going to actually sway anything anyway, either in a very blue state or a very red or Republican state. Other kind of arguments basically just that one should not vote for even a left or very slightly left or centrist neoliberal, even in the case when that person is dislodging somebody as heinous and awful as Trump. That I don't really buy now. I don't get that. In the UK, in Italy, anywhere I've ever lived, in Finland where I live now, I would never go along with that argument. I think there's always going to be a lesser of two evils, So, I think it's kind of clear that if Trump is left in and he's emboldened when he's already kind of supporting white supremacy, going against anti-fascism, which can only make someone a fascist. I think if you embolden someone like that, you risk, much more than if you simply put somebody else in who's much similar to him, but is coming into presidential office as president for the first time. It's a different thing. So, if anything, to disrupt a really terrible regime with somebody incoming who's, also bad, is better than leaving that terrible regime in. It at least demonstrates that it's possible to remove a president before they get into their second term, which gives out a certain signal. So basically what I'm doing here is adding text. Okay, so basically just adding or repositioning the text there. So it says, "Don't disrespect our boys, or you'll see my angry side." Then at the bottom it says, "Let the Dems do that." So, I mean, there's no kind of hoodwinking the public. We can vote the Dems to get Trump out, but the Dems have no more respect for US soldiers than the Republicans, I guess, having sent them to war several times the last 2 decades. So it's that simple. I mean, that's your choice. You got Trump, you got Biden. We don't think Biden's going to be much better, but at least we get rid of Trump, and then we think again. And here is the meme finished. There you go. Thank you for being with me, and see you in the next edition of Acid Left Tactics. Thank you.